The 49ers play the Cardinals in 2 days. What do the Niners need to do to win the game? I'll ask Tom Walsh that question next, plus more on Ask Tom Walsh. Good morning. Welcome to Ask Tom Walsh, sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. That is the legendary Tom Walsh, former offensive coordinator for the Raiders. I am Just Grant Cohn. Tom, thank you very much for coming on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Grant. Good morning to you all. Hope you're doing well in the Bay Area.
Okay, so before we get into the Cardinals game, the Niners beat a loaded Patriots team, 30-13. Not a lot to say about that game, but what were your takeaways from how the Niners won that game?
Well, number one, I was pleased with how the defense responded. They got some pressures. They made some plays. Warner comes up with another interception. I think, they just need to start to pull things together and get focused and rally around the guys who are healthy, block out all the distractions that have been going on off the field, which they've been numerous situations this year that just are mind-boggling about how they've become, major points for discussion in the media and everything. But, it's about time that they responded.
It seemed like It seemed like they had great effort against the Patriots, great effort against the Jets week one, and then on the road against the Vikings and Rams, it seems like they got outworked. What do you make of a team that's kind of bipolar like that?
Well, I think the next few weeks, they have a chance to make a statement that they've regrouped, refocused, and they're energized and zeroing in on making a good run to qualify for the playoffs. They're not going to do it if they're just an up and down ball club, because that's not, 9-8 probably may not even get you the seventh wild card spot, the last wild card spot in the playoffs.
Do you look at the 49ers differently because of how they beat the Patriots? Like after the game, they said on Twitter, "We're back." They're 2-2. They beat the Patriots. Are they back?
Now, you cannot look at the Patriot game and claim that that's your litmus test to determine if you are back in the playoffs. I'm sorry, no disrespect. The Patriots probably are the 31st or 32nd ball club in the NFL when you start to line up teams and stack them up from top to bottom. And, they should have stomped them. There's no question about it. There's no comparison in terms of talent and skill set, and they should have dominated them.
Yeah, I saw Bill Belichick say this week that he's sure Gerard Mayo has a plan. He's just not sure what it is. That's what a condemnation. But we're not here to talk about the Patriots. I want to ask, but last week I talked to you. I said, what do the Niners do about Jauan Jennings? He's asserting himself as a starter. How do you get him more involved? And you said, easy. 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. That's your base offense. I asked Kyle Shanahan if he would go that direction. He was like, well, he is one of our 11 best players, but we like the schematic advantages of 21 personnel. So first play of the game against the Patriots, no Jordan Mason on the field. Jennings, Debo, Aiyuk, Kittle, Juszczyk, and the hands off to Debo. And so they started Jennings and Juszczyk, but then after that, they went back to their normal workload. What do you think of Kyle Shanahan's reluctance to embrace 11 personnel?
Yeah, but that's Kyle. I'm sorry, he's not going to let other people, especially media, provide him with the narrative about what direction he should take about whom he plays. And that's his response.
So he acknowledges, yes, Jennings deserves to start. He's improving, but I'm not going to bench Juszczyk because you told me to. I'm going to bench Jordan Mason, and that was my idea. And it's a third option, and it's even better.
Well, he could have thrown a screen pass to Juszczyk on the first play of the game out of that personnel grouping, and then he would have had both Juszczyk on the field plus given Juszczyk a touch. Then he could have put him on the sideline. He had his one touch per game. His quotient.
It seems to me like Kyle's playing with fire. If they win, everything's okay. But if they lose and you have a wide receiver like Jennings, who's as hot as he is, and he only has 5 targets, it seems like you could point to the coach and say, well, maybe if you gave your best wide receiver more opportunities, you'd win. He's getting opportunities. He's still not he's playing 60% of the snaps, which seems like, I don't know. I don't know.
The thing about which I would be concerned, it's maybe the snaps might be a factor, but I want to look at in terms of how many times he's targeted as the primary receiver in the progression for the quarterback in the pass pattern that Shanahan calls. And so you could put a guy on the field for 40 plays and he could be a target. He could be the primary guy for 8 passes. Or he could be the primary guy for 4 passes, but you can control that by the pattern you call, predicated about what you think the coverage is going to be. And I could get Jennings, 8 targets and 35 plays if I want.
Kyle has mentioned that the reason he likes 21 personnel isn't necessarily because that's his best 11 players. There's schematic advantages. And it seems to me they run the ball well no matter what personnel grouping is. So I'm thinking it has to do with the coverages. Like, does he feel that the coverages are more simplified when you're facing base defense as opposed to nickel? Like, what is his rationale?
Well, the thing about it that is strange is I would think that 11 personnel with the 49er run game would be better because you have a sub defense on the field and you have smaller defenders. Theoretically, you're taking off either a linebacker or a bigger player and substituting in a nickel corner because of the 11 personnel. And so that you would gain an offensive mismatch by having the defense go small, and then you still have your wide zone and your inside zone and your sucker runs and those kind of things that they can feature even with 11 personnel. And I would think that it'd be an offensive advantage to run the ball against a lighter box than if you go to 21 and they go to a heavy box and even 8 in the box against you.
Especially with a running back like Jordan Mason. I mean, good luck to a nickelback trying to bring him down in space.
No, he's a very aggressive runner. He runs, we used to call that, he runs angry. And so it kind of, I have to laugh. You watch him and you kind of think of the Marshawn Lynch's and those kinds of running backs. With the Rams had a guy, Jackson, in the old days, or running back out of, I think, Oregon State, who ran in a similar pattern, but he's a bull of a back.
Am I wrong to assume that Kyle Shanahan likes exploiting base defensive personnel? Is there, I mean, obviously you have more linebackers in the field. They're worse in coverage. Also, is there less scheme that you're going to see in terms of coverages and pressures when you're facing base defense as opposed to nickels?
Well, he may feel more comfortable with what he knows in attacking base defenses. When you get into your sub packages now, you're seeing a lot of exotic fronts. You're seeing, basically the split 6 looks. You're seeing a heavy package up front with DBs on the line of scrimmage, and you have more bodies at the line. And actually, that more show dogs are coming out of sub defenses now than previously, because so many offensive units are utilizing multiple personnel groupings with 10, 20, cinco, 5 wides, quads. So by going to a sub package, you're going to see more combinations, and defenses are spending more time practicing now with their sub packages than they are with their base packages, because so many teams in the league now are shifting offensively to multiple receiver sets. So he may think he's forcing the opponent now to spend more time practicing in base defense because of what he's doing offensively.
Makes sense. Well, let me ask you this, to bring it back to the beginning of this topic. We think we hypothesize that Kyle Shanahan won't adjust because the media suggested it. When you were an offensive coordinator, did you ever read the newspaper one morning and see a suggestion from a writer and say, "That's a great idea, I'm taking that"?
No, that was not part of our repertoire. I didn't have that opportunity. Nor back when we were coaching in the early '80s through the mid '90s and even in the early 2000s, all this social media stuff was not prevalent.
Right.
You didn't have all these shock jocks, the gel-heads out there talking, throwing their expertise out, and they didn't know if the ball was pumped with air or stuff with rags. Nowadays, y'all are the gurus and the geniuses, and you know more football than the damn coaches do.
Well, because I got you. All right. Well, here's what I want to ask you about. The Niners offense is doing well. They're second in yards. They're moving the ball very well without Christian McCaffrey. The yards after the catch aren't there, so they're throwing they're finding ways to get the ball into the red zone. But once they're in the red zone, they're only converting at 50%, which is like 20th in the league. Last year, they were number 1 at 68%. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey was a big part of that. He scored a ton of touchdowns. He's not there anymore. What do the Niners have to do to improve a red zone offense because they still have too much talent to be ranked 20th.
When they had McCaffrey now, one of the key things they could do offensively, which I don't see a back who has that skill set right now to replace what McCaffrey did. They could throw a lot of choice routes to McCaffrey when he was in the red zone, high red zone, low red zone. And the key thing was he could get open in a small space, like on a choice route, 5 yards across the line of scrimmage, option route. And then his run after the catch ability also help. And see, the Niners have to understand it's tougher today to throw the ball directly into the end zone for the touchdown, to throw it over the top of the defense. They're playing 4 quarters. They're playing Tampa 2. They got the Mike Backer running down the middle. You need to be able to throw the ball underneath and catch and run. And so the one thing I noticed when you study zones and combo coverages and things these days, where it's half man over here and zone on this side of the field or vice versa, your trailer receiver is the guy who's going to be open. So, for example, if I run a receiver across on a shallow crossing route, I can bring another receiver either off of movement from the opposite side, coming across the formation, or from the outside in, and have him come in on an angle underneath to trail in like the vapors of the first receiver, because as the first receiver goes through the zone, he's going to expand and push the zone diagonally and horizontally. So now that's going to create space for the second receiver and create a void into which the ball can be thrown. And that's where the ball has to go, into that void right there. Now that guy has to be able to catch the ball and then get his foot in the ground, one step, plant, and get up the field. And so your trail routes on the outside, I think, would merit using the wide receivers to catch and run. Like if you run Aiyuk across the formation and bring in Debo behind him on an angle route, because Debo can run after the catch a bit. He's not going to beat you vertically, but once he has the ball in his hands, he's going to be a load for a corner or a safety to tackle. So then throw the ball to him on a trail route and let him come up underneath and turn and then get vertical and run to the end zone.
We saw Brock Purdy throw a beautiful touchdown pass against the Patriots to George Kittle in the back left corner of the end zone. And you probably saw it. There were 3 Patriots all over Kittle. He made one of the most impressive catches of his entire career. It seems like what you're saying is it's tough to make a living that way in the red zone.
It is. The defenses, they're always thinking back pylon. Okay, the number one thing they're thinking, okay, is the guy going to run the fade? Is the slot going to run the fade? Am I going to have a deep opposite going to that back pylon? Everyone wants to throw the ball to the pylon. There's a 5-yard box that's a 5x5 square that you tell the receivers, let the quarterback throw the ball to the box 5x5 inside the back pylon. You don't run to the box because then you're going to bring a host of defenders with you. You actually let the quarterback take you to the box with the throw, then you can accelerate to but yeah, you're going to have a convention at the pylons in the back corners. How many balls you watch in a game on Sunday, they get inside the 20-yard line, the first throw to the back pylon.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think what's interesting is with McCaffrey, sure, great running back, you can hand him the ball, he'll score, but also like just the ability to throw it to him in the flat on a choice route, a relatively safe throw in the red zone. He can get open, he can make a guy miss, he can score a touchdown. That's a really easy way to score. Aiyuk can't do that. Kittle can't do that. Debo can, but he can't run choice routes like Christian McCaffrey at all. So it's interesting, like, what about throwing the ball to Jordan Mason a little bit more in the red zone? Like, he can break tackles. He can't run choice routes like Christian, but what do you think?
Well, the thing about it is, you can design a couple things to where you can get the ball to him, even out of the backfield with some blockers down the field and run some slip screens and some things like that with him having the ball in his hands. But yeah, he's not going to be the guy who can run a dodge route or a choice route up the field. And, that's made it more difficult for the Niners to score in the red zone, especially when you get into the low red zone. And you've got to have a run game that you're willing to call to be able to attack, even in 11 personnel. Where are my crack tag schemes where I'm pitching the ball, pulling linemen, and blocking down and sealing to the inside with the wide receivers? And ball on the edge to where now, if I'm pitching it to Mason, now a corner and a nickel secondary player is going to have to come up and make the play. And I've got an offensive lineman out in front blocking for him also on the crack tag schemes.
You know, it's interesting yesterday. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You can do it with the two-man scheme or a three-man scheme. We used to call it taxi and cab are the plays on the crack tag concepts to get outside.
You know, it's interesting yesterday, Chris Forster, the run game coordinator, offensive line coach, did his press conference and was asked, what's up with the red zone offense? And he said, you know, it's on me. I keep suggesting run concepts. First of all, he said, we're not running the ball well in the red zone at all. And I keep suggesting run concepts to Kyle that aren't working. So you always love it when a coach blames himself. It's clear privately, he probably doesn't think it's all on him. But he said the run game isn't working and the concepts they're calling aren't working in particular. I mean, have you seen anything? I like the idea of getting Jordan Mason on the edge as opposed to just running him up the A-gap all the time.
Well, you know, everybody runs. The thing about it is defenses now, when you get into the red zone, the field has shrunk. Your secondary players are closer to the line of scrimmage by alignment because there's no grass behind them. We're not playing with a Canadian end zone 25-yard deep. So now all of a sudden, I've got more defenders who can fill and respond more quickly in the run game as well. And I've got to say, okay, where are the weak spots? And most of the weak spots, if I can leverage the edge of the formation, are out on the perimeter. I've got to get a guy out on grass, and I've got to get players in space and make people have to converge and try to make angle tackles and try to get a physical mismatch with a bigger back on a smaller DB. And hopefully the back can punish them enough to where we can gain yards.
When you were coaching with the Raiders were famously known for speed on offense and the ability to stretch the field vertically. When you got down to the 6-yard line, how did you use that speed?
Well, we flipped the field from a vertical concept to a horizontal concept. And so now, you know, you get guys like Branch and, you know, you've got other great receivers in Jet and Timmy Brown and, you know, Mervyn Fernandez and James Lofton and Willie Galt and Sam Grady and guys who could run, track guys. And then now we ran a lot of the crossing schemes with reads versus zone versus man. And, you know, that's another thing I noticed. The receivers have to have options. You know, I got to run you on a crossing route, on a sneak route, or on a flanker drive like a Jerry Rice concept or Timmy Brown on a shallow cross. Hey, if it's zone, you're going to sit down in the opposite guard tackle box on the other side of the formation. If it's man-to-man, you've got to be able to come across at an angle. Now, I've got to make some kind of a stick move or give a feeling to the defensive back to make him chatter and freeze his feet. Then I can accelerate away from him. We have too many players nowadays who just run. Versus man-to-man, you cannot just make it a flat-out foot race. You've got to have a stick or a stem in your route to disrupt the DB, to make him hesitate and pause like a stutter move, and then I can accelerate and get quick separation. Then, bam, the ball's got to be there now when I have that quick separation. But I just cannot make it where the quarterback looks up and he sees 4 legs running across the field all in a cluster. And, you know, that's not the decisive edge you want to have for your receiver. Yeah, it's a movement as you're going diagonally and horizontally across the formation.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching Ask Tom Walsh, sponsored by BetUS. Let's take a look at the current MVP odds. Mahomes somehow is still the favorite at plus 275, then Josh Allen at plus 350, Lamar Jackson plus 900, Sam Darnold plus 900. Tom, early in the season, who are you liking to potentially win the MVP award this year?
Oh my goodness. You know, right now, I tell you, where's Derrick Henry in the mix?
Let me look.
You're looking at a back who potentially could lead the league in rushing and escort the Ravens into the playoffs.
Absolutely, because if they make a big leap this year, it's not going to be he's the big difference on this team. That's the big addition they've made. And
he'll make Lamar Jackson a better quarterback.
I like that. Do you think a running back hasn't won an MVP since Adrian Peterson. Do you think Derrick Henry is a potential Hall of Famer?
Well, I think you have to keep in mind, you look at the statistics, you look at his yards per carry, and you look at his durability, you look at his touchdowns. You know, he doesn't flash. He doesn't jump out at you like a Barry Sanders or a Walter Payton or a Marcus Allen kind of a back, and those great backs. He's not a great receiver. He's a running back. And, you know, so his profile is a little bit different, but you have to look at the dominance that you look at the Eric Dickersons of the game. Eric was not a great pass catcher either. He was lined up 7.5 yards deep and ran the counter gap. That was Eric Dickerson. That was his signature play.
Well, look, I'm placing it down $50 on Derrick Henry to win the MVP. If he wins, $6,250, and I will give it most of it to Tom. Thank you very much. I like that call. Now, let's get back to the Niners. Tom, I mean, the Brandon Aiyuk situation, he's not the first wide receiver to turn into a bit of a diva after getting paid, but you saw last week he wasn't wearing the same shorts as the rest of his teammates, and Kyle had to yell at him, and then he like kind of threw a little bit of a fit, and he isn't really producing, and he wasn't producing in the playoffs either. Like, what do you think is going on with Brandon Aiyuk, who was so good last year?
I think he just likes to poke the bear, and that's Kyle. So I think that's his way of just,
Me too.
So I think there's a little mind game going on between the two. And, I think the thing about it is, though, I am shocked that a player, especially on offense, be it a position player or the quarterback or quote unquote a captain of offense would not have walked up to Brandon Aiyuk the minute I saw him walking on the field with red shorts and everyone's wearing black. I said, hey, Brandon, this is a team game. I think everyone else is dressed in black shorts, black whatever. You can wear black leggings, black sweats, black shorts. I think you need to get your butt back in the locker room and dress accordingly so that we can have a good practice, everyone together, no one creating any ripples and all that. And it didn't happen for some reason. I don't know why. Juszczyk or these other guys would not address the situation. Why would they let that go?
And it's like, if he were playing on his fifth-year option, I would understand a player being standoffish or moody or not feeling like he's really part of the team, but he got everything he wanted. I mean, they made all of his wildest dreams come true. He got the chocolate factory and the great glass elevator and $30 million a year, and he's still moody. Like that's I don't get it. But I mean, maybe like you said, there's something personal going on between him and Kyle. I could see that. Yeah. Who knows?
But we never had that problem at the Raiders because the players policed the locker room. We had leaders. You had guys like Hendricks. You had Dalby. You had even quiet leaders like a Plunkett. But you had other players who would step up, and players just did not do that. Hey, they didn't do that.
Well, look, we talked before the draft, and you said, look, respectfully, I think Brandon Aiyuk's a hell of a player, but I don't think giving him the extension that he wants is the right move for the 49ers. I don't think they can justify the contract with the production he's going to give them, and then boom, cut to right now. He's getting about 3 catches a game. That's exactly what he had in the playoffs last year. Is this a big problem for the 49ers, this contract?
It's going to be big next year because, you've got a quarterback who's going to want to get paid.
Yep.
And then also you look at your other guys who are going to want to have a redo on their deals. And but yeah, the bottom line is, I'm going to pay you for what you're going to produce and what you're going to do for me in the future, not for what you did in the past, because those days are gone. And the thing about it in the first place is the design of the offense in the passing game, especially, does not measure with the contract that they gave Aiyuk because their offense isn't built for a $30 million receiver. I mean, he's not, the kid in Cincinnati. It's just
not Tyreek Hill.
No, he's not. He's not that kind of player. They don't have a design to take advantage of a player of it. I mean, heaven forbid, what would Tyreek Hill look like in the 49er offense?
Maybe 4 or 5 catches a game.
Maybe.
Yep.
Jefferson. I mean, I can't.
Maybe 7 for Justin.
The other thing is, people talk about Devontae Adams going to the Jets, going to the Saints, or going to even the Niners if they were to make some kind of a swap. I don't know if Kyle could utilize the guy. I don't know if Kyle knows how to utilize a player of that magnitude.
He did a good job with Julio Jones once upon a time, but again, like Kyle would turn Devontae Adams into a decoy. Oh, you think I'm going to Devontae? Well, actually, here's a pass to Trent Taylor.
Yeah, I think sometimes as a coach, they can get into an over analytical deal and end up with some mental paralysis because they try to outthink the opponent and or like you call the reverse psychology play, and then you paint yourself into a corner, and pretty soon you're not doing what your players are best equipped to do.
You know who that was? Keena Turner.
Oh,
he just walked by. Anyway, Harold McAllister says Brock threw an interception in the red zone to the pylon. It's interesting. The Niners were up multiple scores, fourth quarter at the 23. Aiyuk runs a corner route to the back pylon, and I guess the zone defender just drops and intercepts the pass. Like you said, the defense is expecting that pass.
The first place you want to defend in the low red zone or the high red zone is the pylon. If you're thinking that, okay, how many ways is the opponent going to try to get the ball to a receiver in the back corner of the end zone and have a quarterback be able to throw it with a good trajectory to drop it down on top of the pylon right there, like that parachute bringing the ball down in the back corner. And it becomes a jump ball situation. Look at how many balls land out of bounds.
Right. So it's a safe pass, right? The idea is it's either going to be a touchdown or an incomplete pass, not an interception. Although Correct. It was an interception for the Niners.
Yeah, but you don't want. But the problem is too many offenses think that they're going to win a jump ball situation.
Right.
See, they call it, well, we'll throw a 50-50 ball to the back pylon. Well, let me say this. I'm not going to waste a shot in the end zone on a 50-50 proposition for a touchdown.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's not good odds. I want 75-25. I want 80-20,
And to me, depending on the wide receiver, those odds change. Like if it's George Kittle, it might be closer to 70-30. But with Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, he's a good route runner. He's a nice deep threat, but 50-50 guy, contested catch guy, I would rather throw to Jennings.
Well, yeah, plus you got to look at the personnel matchup of who's covering the guy to whom you're throwing the ball. Now, I may have a better matchup throwing the ball to Kittle because he has a safety on him, and he may be better than the safety. I throw the ball to Aiyuk. He may have the number one corner on him, a better defender, a better athlete, and all of a sudden, it's not the winning proposition that your whiteboard design made you think you had when you start to analyze the personnel in the situation.
Okay, let me ask you this. Niners play the Cardinals on Sunday. The Niners are 8.5-point favorites, I believe. No one's really taking the Cardinals seriously in this game, but the Niners did lose to the Rams a couple of weeks ago, who got destroyed by the Cardinals. So what are you interested to see in this game?
Well, the thing is, and it goes back to even when Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator for the Niners and they were playing the Cardinals. My number one concern is, from a defensive perspective, how am I going to contain Kyler Murray? Now, last week, I don't think he had any yards scrambling or much of a scramble against Washington. Washington, got into a shootout, and their quarterback, the rookie, the guy completes 26 out of 30 balls for 230 yards. Yeah. Now, but see, the thing about it is the improvisational skills of Kyler Murray, especially on third downs. If I'm playing like a too high man under kind of scheme, I've got to have a spy who can catch him. I cannot have all of my pass rushers on the same level as they push the quarterback, because then once he breaks through, then it's wide open space. I've got to have him staggered. I've got to have somebody always in the A or B gap. I cannot have only B gap and outside rushers where they open up the middle of the field like a Grand Canyon. So I worry about that. And my number one concern is, how are we going to spy and control Kyler Murray? Number two, I got to respect Connor, the running back. The guy, I think he got over 100 yards last week, so you've got to respect the run from him. And then the other thing about which I'd have a concern from a defensive perspective, they got this rookie kid, Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver. I'm waiting for his breakout game. Now, I remember back in a couple of years ago, the Cards had a wide receiver named Andre Hopkins. Was that correct? Who would catch like 10, 11 passes a game against the Niners. Well, they're trying to play their old defense. How many isolation plays are they going to be able to create with Marvin Harrison running that 12-yard outcut, a 12-yard hook route, just a hitch to get the kid the ball? So how are they going to contain him?
That's interesting. Looking at the Cardinals, they're a run-first team. They've run the ball more than they've passed it, and they're one of the more successful running teams in the league. The Niners did a great job against Ramondre Stevenson and Breece Hall, but this is like an 11-man rushing attack. And it's not just Connor and the scrambles they have to worry about. It's like matchup football, zone read stuff. And that's been an issue that has been an issue for the Niners defense throughout the years.
Well, it's also, even in previous years, they still could not handle the scrape exchange down in the low red zone on the zone read. And you'd see a quarterback walking into the end zone because the linebacker who was supposed to scrape an exchange with the defensive end and take the QB on the keeper invariably would step up and bite on the fake with the ball to the run. The quarterback disconnected it on the read, and there was no defender to play the quarterback.
Yeah, the 49ers don't run that play offensively, and so they don't practice against it very much, especially in training camp. So it seems like when they finally do face a team that features some quarterback-driven runs, or at least has him involved in the running game, the Niners are a little unprepared a lot of times. So I'm curious how they do the run.
Well, the other thing too, Grant, is who on the Niner offense as a scout team quarterback can simulate what Kyler Murray does. I mean,
a punt returner.
Yeah, you're not going to put Allen back there, or your backup quarterback, or your third quarterback.
Dobbs isn't Kyler Murray.
No,
you put Jacob Cowling back there.
The hard thing is, who am I going to put back there who could run around, and change direction and stop on a dime and cut to give my defense what it feels like? I tell you, here's a classic point. When we would face great pass rushers for our offensive tackles in the old days, Henry Lawrence, Art Shell when they were still playing, Big Bruce Davis when he was playing, Cliff Branch would line up after practice as a defensive end rushing off the edge against Art. Because Art wanted to feel what it was going to be like the kick step against real speed. So he would take Branch, and Clifford would come out there and line up, getting a 3-point stance. And on his movement, Art would kick, and Clifford would just blow up the field for 5 yards, just to make Art understand that's what speed is. And see, if you don't see speed in practice and you don't simulate speed in practice, it'll be the second or third quarter by the time your defense adjusts to the speed of the player.
I got a stat for you. Kyler Murray this season, first half, quarterback rating 138.4. Second half, 67.3. Is that a little bit of what you're talking about? Like, you can try to prepare for him, but you can't. And so the first and second quarter is going to be a shock, but eventually you get the feel for him.
That's correct. You've got to get used to the speed of the game and how he plays the game, his improvisational skills, and you've got to be able to get a feel for it. And it does take a while to adjust.
So when you see that split stat, are you thinking this is a guy who's made leaps and bounds as a quarterback, or do you feel like this is a guy who's being maybe protected, propped up? Like, what is your impression of the evolution of Kyler Murray? Is he getting better? Is he on the Baker Mayfield track, or has he flatlined, plateaued?
Well, right now he's still an up and down guy. Mm-hmm. There's not that level of performance that you'd like to see on an even keel week in and week out. The other thing is, it's not always about how good Kyler Murray is going to be. How bad is he going to be when he's bad? Yeah. And the thing about it is, how low will his game sink in terms of interceptions or bad reads or bad decisions? You're more concerned about those depths to which he's going to go when he sinks offensively, and the impact it's going to have on your ball club. And that's why I've got to have a package for Kyler Murray as a play caller, as a coordinator, to get him back on track and get him flowing back with what he feels most comfortable doing. So I can find a way when he starts to go down in performance during the game, I've got to have some plays that are his bread and butter that he can execute to elevate him back up to where I want him to be, to where he's more of an even keel performer. So I've got to be able to control him that way and say, okay, what does Kyler do best? Now I've got to go feature that to get him back into the groove.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenge the 49ers defense faces this week. The Niners offense is facing one of the worst defenses in the league statistically. They have Budda Baker, who's good, and I'm not sure what more they have. So what are you looking to see from a Niners offense this week? Do you want to see them dominate, or what do you want to see?
Well, the thing about it is, I want to see. I believe the Cardinals are tied for the worst red zone defense in the NFL. I think they've given up like 11 touchdowns in the red zone, and I think there's one other team, like maybe Carolina, who might also have given up that many touchdowns in the red zone. And so, then you look at Daniels last week is 26 out of 30 throwing the ball. No, I don't think he threw any touchdown passes, but the guy completed like 84% of his passes.
Yeah.
No sacks.
Yeah.
So now Arizona doesn't show, they don't have Watts anymore. The guy's in the broadcast booth somewhere. So, they've got a linebacker with Kazir White and Budda Baker. Those are the only two defensive guys of whom you think about have some kind of a dominating presence on the field. So the Niners should have enough tools in their, belt to be able to win this ball game handily. The problem is mentally, are they going to be ready to, step up? And the impact I have is, what's it going to be like in the first quarter and a half with Kyler Murray? If they can rein him in and box him in and control him, then I think you're going to see a very good game from the Niners. If he's out there running amok and he's all over the field and they can't contain him in third down situations and he's ripping off gains and as a improvisational rusher on passing downs, because the Niners don't have a spy who can, who's the spy for the Niners who can catch Kyler Murray?
I don't think they have one. I think they got to play zone coverage and have like all eyes on them.
They're going to have Fred Warner in coverage on the running back probably. Yeah. So now there has to be another linebacker or a safety who you're going to put down into a nickel backer if you go with a big scheme and put in a safety instead of a second backer who can run and chase down Kyler Murray. Who's going to spy Kyler Murray? That's my question.
Or they're just going to play zone.
But see, then you give them some easy throws.
Yep. Yes, you do.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. I'm looking here. The Cardinals giving up 68% touchdown percent in the red zone. That's 25th. That's not good. So yeah, this is an opportunity. And also, like you said, Jaden Daniels had 4 incomplete passes in this last game. Also ran for 50-something yards. And never got sacked. So he was almost perfect. And I guess we don't expect perfection from Brock Purdy, but the last guy did. What are you seeing from Brock this year? His numbers are down a little bit. He's 2-2. He doesn't have Christian McCaffrey anymore. Is he getting better? Is the league catching up to him? What's your impression of Brock?
I don't think it's a matter of the league catching up with him. Number one, the Aiyuk factor has taken away a few big plays that they would get. 1 or 2 throws a game to Aiyuk, those are big gains. You're not throwing a 5-yard hitch to the guy. You're hitting him on a downfield throw. You're talking about big chunk passes. So that part's missing right now from Aiyuk. And then you're missing the security blanket, so to speak, of having McCaffrey to whom you can throw the ball on a 5-yard route and he gains 12 yards because his run after the catch ability is so good. So you've taken out a big chunk of a safety valve concept for the Niners offensively because you don't have a running back you're utilizing out of the backfield like you did McCaffrey. And so it's a lot easier to complete a 5-yard throw than it is a 25-yard throw. So, and then McCaffrey gains you another 7-8 yards after the catch. Now, the thing about it is, you've got to have somebody else who could replace that value that McCaffrey provided and the additional run after the catch. So far, the Niners have not demonstrated that. So now that puts a greater burden on the other players. And also, it gives the defense some relief because they don't have to worry about the McCaffrey factor because he's not out there. So that's one less weapon, one less dominant player against whom the defense has to have no concern.
Yeah, Forrester was saying yesterday that there are certain things that defenses won't do against the Niners when McCaffrey's on the field that they will do when he's off the field, and now that just makes everything so much more difficult for them.
That's a good observation by him because it's accurate.
What's your prediction for the game? Niners-Cardinals.
I should think that the Niners should still score 27 to 34 points.
Yeah.
You know, especially if they get their red zone act together. You know, the thing about it is, you know, what normally there's been a few big chunk plays that can get the Niners into the red zone quickly. And that's another factor that I don't see this year that has been prominent in previous years, even with Kyle calling plays. I don't see those big chunk passes for, 35, 40 yards, the deep crossing routes, the clear outs, and the receiver dragging, catching the ball 22 yards down the field. And, the Niners would be in the red zone within 3 plays, bam, they'd be there. Now they have to work and matriculate the ball down the field a little bit more. And I think that also is making it more of a struggle for them. They don't have that big play dynamic that they've had previously. And they're having to earn their way down the field more than they did previously.
We see that the Cardinals lost 42-14 last week. So the Niners absolutely should be expected to beat them. That being said, a couple weeks ago, the Niners faced the Rams, who were coming off a 41-10 loss, and the Rams beat them. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Niners show up and take this game seriously. We have a couple of questions. Ethan says, why does Kyle always stop running when up 10?
Yeah. He must think the game's in the bag. But I tell you what, if you're up by 10, you should run the close out of the game. Especially if you got 6 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter, you're ahead by 10 points. Why am I throwing the ball?
Why? I don't know. Harold McCow says, Tom, if you were head coach of a team, who would you hire as your defensive coordinator?
Oh, my goodness.
John Fox?
Well, John and I go back to when we were in our 20s, when he was my defensive coordinator in San Diego. John's now a senior defensive consultant for the Detroit Lions. He's been there for several years working with the Lions. And, a great mind, excellent coach, bright, creative, understands the defense. I would bring him in if nothing else, I'd say, John, you can come be the senior consultant and you can coach the coaches on defense. And then, find a young mind who can be groomed, so to speak, and have a senior defensive assistant like John who can, it's like in the old days when I was 27, 26, I had Sid Gilman. That's like having a set of encyclopedias on your shelf, Right. It's like having Einstein in your office every day. Sid, teach me this. Show me. Sid, what do you think about this? Explain something. And the guy had, 60 years of experience,
And that means that vicariously I've been tutored by Sid Gilman. Everyone watching this show today has been tutored by Sid Gilman. So thank you, Sid. Thank you very much, Tom. Those are all my questions. We're expecting a Niners win this week. Let's see if they can take care of business. And we'll talk next week.
Great. Have a good weekend, Grant.
You too, Tom. Thank you very much. See you guys, everyone.